Good evening, everyone. I am 𝗙𝗲 𝗚𝗿𝗆, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the second episode of One on One, where we bring to you some of the best minds in Trinidad and Tobago. Today, we have none other than the esteemed Captain Gary Griffith joining us, and we will be taking on the critical issue of fighting crime in Trinidad and Tobago. Captain Gary Griffith, who needs absolutely no introduction, but I will still say, is a former Minister of National Security, a former Commissioner of Police, who many would say was the best Commissioner of Police the country has had. And he is also the political leader of one of our newest political parties, the National Transformation Alliance. I would like to welcome you, our viewers who have joined us on Zoom and social media, as well as members of the media. We want to make this session as interactive as possible, so if anyone wants to ask questions or make a comment, please feel free to raise your hand, and also feel free to leave comments and questions on the chat. We will aim to end around between 9 and 9:30, as we normally would. So I would like to welcome you, Gary, to our platform for the very first time, and hopefully this will be the first of many. And I want to thank you sincerely for taking the time to join us tonight. We are certainly looking forward to a very informative and engaging conversation with you. So I want to just get straight into the questions while I see our audience is building up both on social media as well as Zoom, right? A lot of people are looking forward to tonight's conversation. And tonight's program is dedicated to fighting crime in Trinidad and Tobago. So if we take a look at the newspaper headlines today, 17 bullets, businessman shot to death in St. Helena, bloodbath trauma. And this was an article about the horrific shooting of the 9 youths in Guanapo that took place last week. And we saw 3 children and a 19-year-old being killed in that horrendous episode. Gunshots every few nights. Barataria 𝗚𝗏𝗆 residents worry about crime. Door open, retiree robbed. And this was another heartbreaking story of a 78-year-old woman who had left her door open while she was filling buckets of water, and she was attacked and brutally robbed by armed criminals in Barapur. And it just goes on and on. Every day I take a look at the news, it's the same thing. Shooting and killing everywhere. Now, I've been living in this country for over 50 years, and I keep saying to people, this is not the same Trinidad and Tobago that I grew up in. And I'm sure that many of you all here will be feeling the same way. You'll share the same sentiments. So, Gary, I want to get the ball rolling with 2 questions right away. First of all, how did Trinidad and Tobago go from being an island paradise to being described as a violent country and having one of the highest violent crime rates in the world? And secondly, many would say you were the best commissioner of police this country had. In fact, many are calling for you to return to that portfolio. So if you were the commissioner of police today, what would you be doing to address the crime situation?
Sure. Good evening to you and to your many listeners. Are you hearing me okay? Hear me?
I'm hearing you fine.
Okay, excellent. How did we get here? We lost our way. That is it in a nutshell. We lost our way. If we recall up to in the year in 1999 or 2000, the homicide rate was just about less than 100. And the then Prime Minister was being criticized and attacked for there being so many murders, 100. Oh, how we wish we could be back to those numbers. What happened after? By around 2004, 2005, politicians started doing a lot that caused serious issues in this country, where they started giving the opportunity for criminal elements to build their empire, known as gangs, known as state contracts. So by the politicians referring to individuals as community leaders, giving them massive state contracts, it continued to build. And then by them building, that empire started where you will get a $5 million contract to build a $500,000 box train. The funds will then be used to purchase more weapons, hire more gang members, bring in more illegal weapons, illegal drugs into the country, sell it, then put hits on other gang members to get their state contracts, and it exploded. So when you actually look at the number of homicides in our country from 2005 to now, 18 odd years later, most of it has been specifically gang-related illegal weapons being the order of the day. Yes, there have been other types of homicides, but I think through the law enforcement agencies, they've done a lot to try to put a hold in it as much as possible, from matters involving domestic violence, confrontation, altercations, and so forth. But that aspect of gang-related activity, it spread to such an extent that now, for the last 2 years, it is no longer gangs killing gangs. It is now they are going after the innocent, going after the law-abiding citizens. And that is where we have reached the point where we have lost the way. And unfortunately, politics and politicians have continued to play a very big part in causing this. It is quite ironic that as I speak to you, the previous political leader, the previous prime minister in the People's Partnership government, she provided a comprehensive document to the present prime minister to assist him in trying to find a way to see if the problem can be solved. And it is very interesting to note that from 1991 to 2023, every time one political party is in government, crime goes up. Every time another political party is in government, crime goes down. And I'm not here, I know people automatically start to become very defensive or be applauding. There's nothing to celebrate or to be upset or defensive about. I'm giving facts. 91 to 95, it went up every year when the PNM was in government. 95 to 2000 went down every year to the point it reached less than 100 at a time. From 2000 to 2010, it went up every single year. In 2010 to 2015, it went down every year. From 2015 to 2023, it has gone up every year, except for my last year when I was Commissioner of Police, because I was able to cheat, if you want to use those words, looking at the systems that we use in the People's Partnership government and just change the words, change the names, and bring back the technology, the tools, the systems that would have been critical to peg back criminals. Unfortunately, what we have seen is every single thing that was put in place by the People's Partnership government up to 2015, when I was the Minister of National Security, it played a fundamental part in being the highest reduction in serious crime in 30 years. Then when I became Commissioner of Police in my last year, it was the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. And all that is required is for a government not to politicize national security. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister started off on the wrong foot. His response to the opposition leader's letter is that it's a voluminous document and it's fictional issues, and he will pinpoint and target what must be extracted. He's already started nitpicking and trying to discredit something that worked. If I was Commissioner of Police again, all that is required is to reboot, plug back, reignite the 100+ policies, programs, systems, units, tools, technology that I put as Commissioner of Police and that I put as the Minister of National Security. Those things being done, it will peg back the criminals, it will take away the deterrent, it will increase the deterrent, and it will take away their product of opportunity.
Gary, I just want you to expand a little bit. You spoke about 100 different policies and programs, right? Maybe for the benefit of the audience, you can just highlight maybe your top 3.
Yeah,
top
sure.
3 things that would
and that's
really
where,
make an impact.
And the letter that 𝗙𝗏𝗄𝗎𝗔 sent to the Prime Minister wasn't about crime plans, it was about giving you all the different crime plans, because every single citizen has a crime plan. In fact, a crime plan is a plan to commit crime. So I wish people will stop saying that. That is what a crime plan is. Trying to find policies to deter crime, to prevent crime. That is something else. And it is not so much of the plans, but how it is implemented. If we don't have systems for good leadership, good management, measuring performance, and making persons accountable, then it is not all of the fancy words that you use. It's not going to work. So the things that we use heavily, technology. It is through technology that when I was Commissioner of Police, it is not coincidental that we put an end to kidnapping. Kidnapping stopped. Home invasion stopped because the criminals couldn't understand what it is we were doing. I obviously wouldn't explain it, but that type of technology, it is there. So when it is that as Commissioner of Police, there were about 11 odd persons that were actually rescued and released whilst they were being held by the kidnappers from the 𝗙𝗏𝗆 incident, go all the way up. The criminals realized something this man is doing that is causing him to pinpoint us whilst we are holding the victims. That is the type of technology that we had. We had technology to provide what was known as predictive policing, anticipating the crime before it takes place, stopping the murders from taking place because of the type of technology we had. So that technology is one aspect, and that will also incorporate things like a social media response team, using the type of technology that is out there from the dark web and so forth. Then there's the other aspect of specific units that are required. The units such as the Special Operation Response Team, they played a critical part to put fear back in the criminals, because the criminals realized, listen, unless it is you have this very elite, highly trained unit, that they were coming after the criminals, and we were involved in rescuing persons involved in human trafficking, in major criminal activities. We were seizing drugs, weapons. That's the Special Operation Response Team, and there were other units like that. They shut down the Special Operation Response Team. They formed it. It was formed with a new unit called the National Operation Task Force. In the last 2 years, their biggest success has been to arrest an old lady selling school books on the pavement. And that is the contrast that you will have. And the other aspect would be policies, specific policies that would have been critical to be able to improve our policing, improve them in their training, customer service, getting the public trust and confidence. That was 14% when I took over, and when I left, it went to 55%. So from one of the least trusted, it moved to the most trusted. And by doing that, it caused many persons now to give information to the police through things such as the police app, online reporting. And by doing that, the police will be getting information. The citizens would not be concerned about reprisal. So, and again, there would have been probably 100+ different policies from the National Operations Center, the Operational Command Center, GPS tracking on the police vehicles, body cameras, covert operations unit, social media reporting, the online reporting, the Special Operation Response Team, and also making sure, finally, getting the right individuals. This was not a Gary Griffith thing. It was me making sure that nobody knows everything. So in national security, politicians are not law enforcement experts, none of them. So unless it is you get the experts, so I got an expert highly trained in technology, another one highly trained in operations, another highly trained in human resource, one highly trained in administration that ensured that I was able to reduce police overtime corruption by 100 million per annum, and then use those funds to acquire many things that the police required. So finding the experts, 19 experts in specific fields, working together as a team, we transformed the police service. And by doing that, it caused a change. Unfortunately, as soon as I left, all 19 of them were fired. We've gone back to the old policing with the gabardine pants and the cane, and that old-time policing is what has caused criminals now, that you could go by a nightclub, shoot someone in their head, and the commissioner's residence is actually 12 seconds away, opposite. And 30 minutes later is when the police will show up. And this is no fault of the officers. It is because of the deliberate shutting down and dismantling of critical things that played a big part in pegging back the criminals.
All right, Gary, I'm going to be a little mischievous here. Now, you said something to the effect that when one administration is in power, crime goes up. When another one is in power, crime goes down. And I want to find out from you, what do you think the main difference is in how the PNM handles crime versus the UNC treats with crime?
Well, if you look at the UNC's track record of the persons they appointed as ministers of national security, I remember a prime minister once said that all is required for a minister of national security is common sense and a level head. And with that, he made a nightclub owner minister of national security. I'm not calling Howard Chinley's name. I'm not that kind of person. And then he appointed another person because he was the general secretary of the party who had absolutely no knowledge, training, understanding of national security. When you do that, you put square pegs in round holes, you're going to fail. And you need to find the persons that have the ability. You don't need to be a law enforcement expert, but leadership. Leadership is critical in transforming national security. So you'd have seen, I think, arguably, the person I would see as the most successful Minister of National Security in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, not myself, but Brigadier General Joseph Theodore. Under Brigadier Joseph Theodore, the murder rate was less than 100. The man did, and I looked at the things he did, I reignited many things such as the community policing, the specific units that he had, utilizing the defense force into the police service, transforming the image of the police service. And that is the type of leadership you need. Bringing an individual, it is the first time in our history a Minister of National Security said his job is not to secure the country, his job is not to find policies. When you put persons like that are totally clueless and they spend all their time trying to attack, discredit, bad talk persons on the other side, I always say you can't expect to lead a country if you show that you continue to hate half of the country. That is not leadership. So that aspect, I think, is one of the things. The PNM has proven that every time that they're in government, they utilize national security resources more so for trying to target political opponents rather than just dealing with the issue. When I was the Minister of National Security and the National Security Advisor, the then Prime Minister, she didn't know much about national security, but her leadership allowed her meet with the commissioners on a regular basis, the Chief of Defense Staff, Commissioner of Police. What do you want? Can this policy work? What kind of laws would be helpful? You will get that from that type of administration, whether it was the NAR, the UNC, or so forth. But with the PNM, every time they get in power, the power goes to their head. We recall just before 2010, they were using the interception to intercept the phones of political opponents. That is a fact. I have the document, 53 persons that would have been seen as not being heavily supportive of the hierarchy of the PNM, inclusive of 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗁 himself, because he was now a blue-eyed boy at the time. Gary Griffith, 𝗙𝗏𝗏-𝗵𝗁, Arnold Roberts, Anand Ramlogan, and so forth. We changed the law under the Interception of Communication Act, but then unfortunately, the people who are appointed are those same persons that the Prime Minister appoints. So now this government has spent all of their time, when it is you have a Prime Minister or a government telling a Commissioner of Police, I am giving you $45 million to hire foreign people to investigate political opponents, you realize where the angle is. When almost 100% of murders committed by firearms or by illegal firearms, but you put no effort, no purpose in trying to drive hard to deal with that problem of illegal firearms, but you spend 100% of your time going on a fishing expedition on dealing with legal firearms that have been instrumental to save so many lives, it shows that unfortunately PNM continues to politicize national security rather than trying to utilize it to secure citizens.
Okay, I want to say good night to everyone who has joined us on Zoom as well as social media. We have well over 100 people live with us. Now, as I had
Alicia, can I say something?
Yes, Gary.
There's some.
And Gary, let me just introduce you to the audience. We have with us Mr. 𝗙𝗏𝗏 𝗵𝗁, who is the founder of several activist groups that all deal with fighting crime in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm very pleased that he's here, and I know he will have many things of value to add to the conversation. So Gary, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just got a complaint that the volume on the Facebook feed is somehow low. So is there anything we can do on our end? Or?
Not really.
Not really, yeah.
Yeah.
Gary, is it on my end? Or?
No. For some reason, they said the feed was coming in low on Facebook. I just got a message about that. So anyway, so I just want to welcome my brother and former Commissioner of Police, and the best Commissioner of Police, as far as I have seen in the country, has the right strategy, in resolving the crime issue, and he was doing such a wonderful job that the Prime Minister didn't see it fit to allow him to continue. But anyway, brother, go ahead.
All right, so if I want to continue along the line of questioning, and I want to turn our attention now to the High Court ruling, which would have blocked the FYU Financial Investigative Unit from accessing Mr. Griffith and his wife bank accounts. Now, I have to say, for me, this was a very, very disturbing ordeal. And just for the benefit of our viewers, to provide a bit of background, a request was made by Mr. Nigel Stoddard, who is the acting director of the FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit, to several financial institutions for information on Gary and his wife's Nico's accounts. But from my understanding, it was not just the Griffiths information that was requested. It was over 50 people and entities in total. So the Griffiths would have challenged the legality of this FIU request, as it was done without any lawful reason, right? They were not under any suspicion of involvement in crime investigation. There were no transactions that were flagged and so on. On September 11, the High Court ruled in favor of the Griffiths, stating that the FIU abused its power and acted outside the Constitution when it tried to obtain the banking information of the Griffiths. So that's just a little background for those who are not aware. Despite the High Court ruling, which I think would have brought some comfort to the nation though, I think any right-thinking citizen would have a number of questions and concerns on this issue. Like what comes to my mind, and I mean, I want the audience to chime in here. Please put any questions you may have on the chat or Anybody who wants to make a comment, feel free to raise your hand, because this is a disturbing issue that goes to the heart of our democracy. So for me, some of the questions that I have in my mind is who or what, let's start with who or what would have prompted the FIU to make such a request? Have other citizens been investigated in this, and I dare say, unlawful manner? Because in the case of the Griffiths, there was a whistleblower who brought this to their attention, and then they were able to act on it. And also the third thing that concerns me is the exorbitant cost of these investigations to the taxpayers. So, Mr. Griffith, if you would like to comment more on that issue, because I know it has been something that the media has been pursuing very vigorously. And anyone else, please feel free.
Yeah, I'll let Gary go first, and then I'm going to jump in.
Okay.
All right, Gary. So, all right. So now, we had so many gates in Trinidad and Tobago. Now this is FIU gate. And it is unfortunate. This is exactly what I was speaking about, where I said that the government spends most of their time utilizing arms of the state, independent institution, to target political opponents rather than put the focus on trying to reduce crime. What has happened here is a nationwide or an embarrassment to our country internationally. When you have a unit like this is supposed to be an independent body. To decide to deliberately target those persons who may be perceived as political opponents of the government, it gives the strong perception that there has been political influence that caused this to happen. Mr. Stoddard and the FIU, they are not stupid. They are fully aware that for them to have any such authorization, there must be a red flag. There must be a financial trigger, something that would have triggered them to have justification to do that. Without doing that, it means that what they did was a virtual fishing expedition in a witch hunt in the hope that you can find something. You cannot use independent law enforcement institutions as a fishing expedition to witch hunt and hope that you can find something on the political opponents of the government. This is when it is, I call this thing democratic dictatorship. We are democracy, but the government is deliberately using specific arms of our institution and probably manipulating them to force them to commit such acts. So in this situation with the FIU, because of certain decisions made by the court, I can't speak about the others who have been affected. But in this situation, to date is me. Who is to say that hundreds of others before me and after me, their accounts are going to be looked at and you're digging up, hoping to find something. If they wanted, I have nothing to hide. They could have contacted me. I would have given them everything, and they could knock your socks off. The fact of the matter is that what they did was illegal. They had no authorization because there was no red flag. But because they're the FIU, they sent these letters to the banks in the hope that you could find something. That is not how law enforcement works. You don't investigate and arrest someone and then see what we could find on that individual. There must be a trigger. There must be a red flag. There must be documents, evidence, witnesses, data. There was nothing. And that is why the court, so the FIU said to itself, well, we are the FIU, we can do what they want. We want. You can't. And let me add, this is not an isolated situation. Same Nicole Griffith, my wife, and myself, again, another whistleblower showed me the document that our phones were being illegally intercepted. Now, to intercept someone's phone, there must be justification. There must be a reason. What the police did and the SSA was use the word intelligence. So anybody who is an opponent of the government can easily liaise with the SSA or the police or the defense force. All three persons, by the way, who head those units are appointed and handpicked virtually by the Prime Minister. And this is not to cast anything on any three of these persons, but you could have second in command or whoever. And they just use the word intelligence, and it automatically means that all of your phones are being macroed, spied, intercepted without any due process, any cause, any reason, no justification, no evidence, no witnesses. So they are tapping into the phones of law-abiding citizens illegally. They are digging up into the accounts of persons. This is the mantra, this is the style of the PNM. And then it went further with the audit situation where the Prime Minister, what Keith Rowley loves to do is to hire civilians, pay them big money, get them to write a report that may be of interest and value to him. The report will be flawed with lies, and then he will try to hide in Parliament like a coward, because Parliament is the one place that you can lie and not be sued, which is why I also took him to court and I filed an injunction and I won the injunction. And then in the matter itself, the court said that no way can you send that document of the audit report to Parliament. If he wants to speak about me and he'll speak me in public, I am waiting for him because I have 3 other matters I'm taking him to court for. So the one institution that has not been compromised so far in this country is our justice system. And you would have seen that by me winning case after case, matter after matter, and exposing the government's obvious manipulation in trying to influence independent institutions to target political opponents of the government.
Gary, I'm seeing a comment from someone on social media, and they're asking, is this matter going to be left here? Whose heads are going to rule? Who is going to pursue this? So is this the end of it now that the High Court?
Nothing is going to happen. So whoever the politicians that would have advised the FIU, they will say, don't worry, you did your job, you stay right there. In any other country in the world, that individual should be removed immediately. He will not move because he believes that, well, all right, the government will protect me. And this is unfortunate. It reminds me of the similar situation when certain police officers went and broke the law. They illegally abducted, they kidnapped a Trinidad citizen in Barbados. They brought the person back to Trinidad and Tobago. The judge said, I can't believe that these individuals are still in the police service. And they still are, because they were they were emphatically working to instructions, because I, as a previous Minister of National Security and a previous Commissioner of Police, I can confirm to everyone listening tonight, the only way police officers could leave Trinidad and Tobago waters is if the Minister of National Security gives approval. So the nonsense the government is saying that they had no knowledge or involvement in the police officers going to Barbados to illegally abduct someone who was, again, part of the fishing expedition. And again, taxpayers are paying millions upon millions in these matters. That, again, is a simple example of when you get these law enforcement persons to do the wrong things, they believe that they are protected by the same political individuals in government who directed them to have done this in the first place. Because those police officers, the judge said, why are they still there? They should have been suspended immediately. Whether it is that they were right or wrong, a matter of that magnitude, but they're still there in the PSB. And then they were actually trying to investigate me for a matter saying that I signed something on a customs form the wrong way, until they were able to discover several commissioners of police before me and after me signed in the same place. So they are not desperate with fishing expedition, but whether it is the audit committee, whether it is the abduction of Brent Thomas, whether it is the interception of cell phones, whether it is the FIU digging up into the accounts of law-abiding citizens without a trigger, it shows that this country has now turned into a police state.
I just want to read some of the comments I'm seeing here on social media. Gary Griffith is a very good, hardworking citizen. Best commissioner. We need you now. Gary, how would you respond to these people who want you back so badly as the commissioner of police?
Well, this is not my first rodeo. So I've been in defense force for 17 years, serving my country. I was the first citizen that returned home with a UN peacekeeping medal. I was the youngest officer in the attempted coup. Then I was a national security advisor, Minister of National Security, Commissioner of Police. I will continue to find a way, and I don't need a job. But I believe that if it is God has given me some type of a gift, I must use it to try to defend my country, to defend citizens of this country. When I was Commissioner of Police, there were 43 death threats on myself and my family. And several of them, they were actually persons who actually became the shooters because of the things that I was doing that were pegging back criminal elements. I probably stepped on too many toes. I went too far because it was not just persons with their pants hanging down and a white vest and long gold chains. It also had persons in suits and ties that were probably closely affiliated with individuals in parliament. So I went too far. And that is the kind of commissioner we need. My point is, what I intend to do is to continue to find an avenue to serve this country. If I cannot do it from a law enforcement perspective, I intend to do it in parliament as a politician. And the same way as I was able to transform not just the police service, the defense force, the customs, the immigration, as the Minister of National Security, I intend to get back in there and totally revamp not just national security, but all arms in our public sector. The public sector can change. 𝗙𝗏 said something in March 2021 in cabinet. He said, if I could get 10 Gary Griffiths, I could transform the country. This is the same man who said I was his biggest mistake, because there were problems with water, with electricity, with sport and education and health, and it lacks leadership. My intention is to get back in government and to be able to transform not just national security, but transform Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to invite the members of the audience, please, if you have any questions or comments, we want to hear from you as well. We want to hear how you feel about the crime situation. How do you feel about the FIU abusing power? What are your expectations from Mr. Gary Griffith? We want to make this as interactive as possible. So please, if anybody wants to make a comment, just raise your hand. Gary, I want to go now to a Facebook post that you had put up on September the 18th. And you said here, I quote, "If our independent institutions continue to be politically compromised, then we are headed to a police state. Our democracy is rapidly being eroded and this must end." Could you elaborate on this? I want to call it a perception for now, but this perception of TNT becoming a police state and democracy being rapidly eroded?
Yeah, well, because the police service, unfortunately, has been totally compromised. And this is nothing about the different police officers. These were the same police officers that have the maturity and the patriotism to go out there to fight that war, to support law-abiding citizens. Unfortunately, senior persons have fallen victim and they are taking instructions from politicians. Anytime that happens, you have now started turning away from a democratic society to that of a police state. You can't take directives from politicians, especially if it is against your oath in office. So if, for example, a prime minister tells me we should arrest persons during the COVID pandemic, during the COVID period, because they were socializing by their pool, I'm not going to take an illegal instruction because you're the prime minister. And that is the type of maturity that we lack in Trinidad and Tobago, where people believe somebody is the prime minister, you have to blindly support that person. That has to stop. That type of maturity is required in all arms of law enforcement. So if I'm in charge of the FIU and somebody is trying to intimidate me to dig up into the accounts, I will tell you where to get off. Fire me if you have to. If I'm in the SSA or the police service and they're telling me dig up and look into tapping the phones of political opponents, I will tell them no. That is what we are lacking, because sometimes people get in a position and they want that post so badly, they will do anything in their power, and they always forget there's going to be a time on your retirement and you're going to walk the streets as a civilian and people are going to remember you. They will remember 𝗚𝗿𝗆 for what she's doing right now. They will remember McDonald Jacob. They will remember Mr. Stoddard. They will remember the individuals who have done certain things that people will see it. Did you really operate in a manner of maturity and impartiality, or is it that you were working and to please those who put you in office? That is the concern that I have. And if it is that we don't have the right persons in charge of these different units, we are going to suffer.
There is a particular paragraph in that post that was done on September the 18th that I do want to read for the audience, and I would like to ask some questions on it. This list of acts, and you had outlined a whole set of acts which would have constituted, I guess, us moving towards a police state. Kwesi, I see your hand up. Let me just finish this point and I'll get to you, right? In fact, Kwesi, let me take Kwesi. Let me take you, Kwesi. I'll take the question from you and then I'll continue to ask my question. So you can go ahead. Hello?
You lost him?
Yeah, hello, you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, pleasant good night, Mr. Gary Griffith, Mrs. Lisha. I remember you was talking about reforming the state and certain arms of national security. And of course, with us being a democracy and there being, the government as well as the opposition, like now, depending on the amount of votes and stuff that you get, like what actions in a democracy could be taken in order to reform the state? For example, like, all right, I don't want to divulge too far from the topic, but for example, campaign finance reform and all of that, right? This is something that has been like political football being bounced around by both sides of the aisle. However, when it is time to institute that reform, you understand? Everybody shies away from it now, but like, how effective is it to reform certain institutions in a democracy, given that they would be pushed back by certain other sides? If you understand where I'm coming from.
I do, I understand fully. And it is difficult. I'll give you a perfect example. It's the first time we actually got into the political arena, myself as a political leader. And I was amazed at the number of persons who wanted to support me, but they said point blank, they are fearful to give me a check for 5,000 TT and put it into the NTA's account, because they know that it's being monitored by government officials. And if they put a cent to support me, they will lose the contracts that they get from the present government. That is amazing. So there's a blatant fear of persons who do not even want to, as it pertains to campaign financing. And then what happens is that the individuals now turn to wanting to give cash, and then cash becomes a major avenue for corruption. So it's a domino effect. It is very unfortunate, but it has to do with when a government wants to have full control, they direct persons and said, if it is like you only show any support for that person, you're going to lose your state contract, not because they are not performing. So it is a very untidy situation. I don't know if it's the same thing that happens in other parts of the world. And then obviously the main aspect we have is that our constitution was drafted in such a way to deliberately ensure that there's going to be that type of, well, not virtual dictatorship, but for since 1981 with the ONR, they had 91,000 votes, almost 20%, and they couldn't get a seat. In 1991, the NAR got 127,000 votes. They could not get a seat. In 2007, the COP got 147,000 votes, almost 25%. They couldn't get a seat. And the only way that could change is if we have a mega majority, not even a special majority. You need to have 31 or 32 of the 41 seats to change the constitution to allow that to happen. The NAR had the chance from 76 to 81 to make those amendments. They blew it. They did not do it at that time. The People's Partnership did not have the majority at that time. And those are the things that's unfortunate. And because of that, first past the post, it makes it there's no way that the PNM would ever agree to proportional representation, because almost every single election, they get less votes than all the other parties put together. And that is why every time the political parties joined, whether it was 1986, 1995, and 2010 with the People's Partnership, the PNM 100% of the time they lose. So they will never have proportional representation as part of a constitutional change. But the only time that can happen is if you have 31 or 32 seats out of the 41.
Okay, are there any other questions, or would anyone else in the audience like to make a contribution? Please raise your hand. All right, so okay, Trini, we'll take Trini and then I'll continue. Go ahead, Trini.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Another interesting program and an interesting guest here, Mr. Gary Griffith. So I'm generally controversial in my discussions. So I'll bring into the topic here about bail. DCP, what's his name? Could Simon appeal to citizens to not to go into vigilante type attacks on criminals? When is he going to appeal to the police and the prosecutors to provide proper information and credible evidence in a timely matter to the courts to effect prosecution of criminals, so as they won't allow bail to repeat offenders, like what happened to our friend who fell off the chair? How did he end up outside? Because of all our judicial systems with 70 cases before the court. I don't know if you want to share some light on what happens with police and prosecutions that causes fellas like them to come before the court and end up being outside. Now, I have a few other questions, but go with this one first. Oh yeah, that's an excellent question. Okay, so that is the reason why when I was the National Security Advisor, I drafted prior to 2010 something known as the Ministry of Justice. Our justice system is so flawed. I mean, you could have situations where someone is in remand for 10 years for an offense that the maximum sentence could be 6 years. And then you have young persons, they go into prisons
for a misdemeanor, they come out a more seasoned, hardened criminal because of who they have affiliated themselves with. So it shows that our recidivism rate is very high because of that, based on poor rehabilitation. That is why I drafted the Ministry of Justice to spend so much time, because we had so many cases that were backed up. We had situations where police officers were not attending court. We had police officers acting as the prosecutors against seasoned attorneys, and they were losing. All of those things required a vast change. And that is why I formed the Ministry of Justice. It was implemented by 𝗙𝗵𝗆-𝗡𝗂 2015. It was disbanded by the PNM because they didn't see the value. So now you can't change the justice system through the Ministry of National Security or the Attorney General's office. You need a ministry by itself to clean up this backlog of decades of mess that has taken place in our justice system. But as the Commissioner of Police, as you write, back as the Minister of National Security, I drafted that situation for that bail amendment bill, that if someone is caught with a firearm, he has something that can kill 13 persons. So others have automatic weapons. In other countries, if you possess that, it is a terrorist act. But in here, you get that and you can get bail for $10,000 and then you get back out onto the streets. And this is not the fault of the judges or the courts. It is because of our system that gives them little opportunity to do this, to change it. And then you have the police officers where constantly they were not even attending court. As a commissioner of police, I remember we made a raid where 63 elderly persons were in cages, 6 foot by 6 foot. Right. Their hands were, their feet were in shackles. The lock was on the outside, and the persons who were charged were released. No fault of the persons or the court, but because of the police. Not one of the officers in SWAT or myself, you asked us to come forward and give evidence, testify, show the videos, and people have been released for that internationally. The world will watch us and say, really? 63 persons in cages, locked in. The key is on the outside. We found tasers. They were in shackles, some of them naked, and nothing happened. And that shows how dangerous our justice system needs to change. It also involves police officers not doing their job, being absent from court. And that is why I put heavy emphasis on it, to put serious disciplinary matters on those officers, which is why we reduced police absenteeism from court by over 87%. It was a massive reduction because anytime an officer was absent from court, they will be disciplined. And then we had the backup officers. Additionally, as I said, I realized the police officers were not very well trained in dealing with seasoned, hardened defense attorneys. So I started bringing in civilians to assist and boost our legal system in the police service. And we were taking them now and we were winning cases because of it. As soon as I left, they removed them. The police officers have now become the front line. Officers have now started being absent again from court. And it gives the impression this can't be incompetence. Sometimes it gives the impression that there's a deliberate attempt by the criminal underworld who have some degree of a foothold in certain arms of our institution that can cause such decisions to take place.
How do we correct something like this?
Well, the present government has no issue. When it is you had a commissioner that was actually doing this, transforming the police service, putting civilian attorneys who are winning cases, disciplining police officers, and you remove him, and then everything has gone back to how it was. The only way this can change, and I'm sorry for being political, is for the government to be changed.
Okay, a young lady was caught with a huge amount of drugs and a gun under your watch, and she acquired bail. Now, as I understand it, when somebody is held for a serious crime and they get bail, correct me if I'm wrong, they're supposed to report to the nearest police station or an assigned police station every week or something like that. And I believe with serious crimes, their passports will be held. This young lady apparently went to Venezuela and got a degree and so on. How does that work? How something like that can happen?
Well, again, if it is that it's not hard and fast, the court can make a decision based on the individual, and that is where I have to be very careful not to make any comments. The next thing I'll be held in contempt. So decisions would be made, but that is why I spoke about the importance of that Ministry of Justice. That Ministry of Justice will have a template to be able to not eliminate, but to minimize many of these shortcomings that we have seen for so long in our justice system, where persons who should be incarcerated for life have an easy avenue to get out. Young men do not have proper systems for rehabilitation, which is what will cause recidivism. Police officers not attending court, police officers going up against seasoned attorneys. poor systems for easy access for bail. When it is certain offenses, you can put it as a terrorist act, and if it becomes a terrorist act, it becomes a capital offense. A capital offense makes it non-bailable. These are the things that are required, but you need to have the political will. You need to be brave enough to be able to do it, because sometimes politicians, they don't want to make decisions because it may affect the votes. Forget the votes, do the right thing and the votes will come.
Tony, I want to thank you for your questions. I'd like to take a few more questions now from social media. I'm seeing some comments on the chat. NTA is boss. NTA will transform the country. As we are on some controversial questions, though, I'm seeing Miss Wendy James saying, Mr. Griffith, do you agree that the NTA brings nothing to the table in an election?
Well,
would you like to respond to Wendy?
Well, yes, I would. The fact of the matter is that the last local government election, the PNM actually got more seats. And because there was not that third party, that bridge constituency. This time around, the NTA went up for the 31 most difficult seats that the PNM held, the safest seats. Each one of those seats, the PNM would have won by 1,000 to 2,500 votes. Almost every single one of that, we were able to cut that down by 300, 400, 170. Massive inroads into the belly of the beast, into PNM heartland, the Laventille Hills, the Belmonts, the Bagatelles, the Chagaramas, the Caranage, the Arimas, the Tunapunas, so all the Port of Spain areas. So you're talking about seats that the PNM, these were their 31 safest seats. And by us getting involved, that third constituency, it showed that many people were saying enough is enough. So as I said, from winning by 1,000 to 2,500, we were able to cut that down to a couple hundred. It was a massive dig into the PNM's heartland. Additionally, what it also did is that the NTA supporters, apart from the 31 seats, they are supporters of the NTA, and they would have been previous ONR supporters, turn NAR, turn COP. That third constituency is always there. In 10 years' time, there will be something else instead of the NTA. And those individuals voted for the UNC candidates in specific seats that initially they may have just voted for the PNM or not voted. And that is where you would have seen in San Fernando that the PNM would have won 6-3. It went down to 5-4, and they held on by their fingernails to hold on to that fifth seat by 26 votes, which was a PNM corporation that they were able to dig into it so deep that it is now neck and neck. Sangre Grande, that the PNM was spending so much time hoping they could win Sangre Grande because it was 5-3. Because of the NTA support, we lifted it up to make it 6-2. In Arima, all of those seats that the PNM would have won easily, because of the NTA support for the UNC candidates, they were able to hold on. It was 0, but they won by 1 vote. They won by less than 12 votes, by 26 votes. Same thing with Tunapuna. So and then it meant that with the UNC, it allowed them, PNM, to have less seats. And finally, in 2019, the PNM would have received 30,000 votes less than the UNC. This time around, it was 60,000 votes less. 60,000, it was double. That is because of the NTA's input. So the UNC and the NTA combined got 190,000 votes. The PNM got 130,000, which was a 60,000 difference. What it showed is that in 2019, there was a reduction from 34% turnout to 30%. That reduction in the UNC in 2019 at 200,000, it went down to 190, joining with the NTA voters. So there was 10,000 less. PNM moved from 160 to 130, 30,000 less, which meant that for the 40,000 less voters, for every 4, 3 were PNM voters. And so for the person who asked that question, take that.
Okay, I see Mr. Lyndon Gans with his hand up. Lyndon.
Hi, good night, Lisa, my good friend. Good night, Captain Gary Griffith.
Hi, nice.
Captain Griffith, you're a person that I hold in high regard, not because I know you personally, but because of your professional approach, nonsense approach, towards your role as Commissioner of Police.
Thank you, sir.
Right? And I always say that you are the person for that job, right? And I recall vaguely when you were appointed to the position, you said you made a statement that actually mirrored a statement that I have been making for some time now. And you said that, it's not so much going after the guys with the their pants below their buttocks and thing, and getting those firearms off the streets with these young guys, because they are just more or less the end users, and if for want of a better phrase. But to use them to get to the big fishes, right? And I guess for that reason, you would have so much their threats to your life because of your approach in going after persons who are well known and associated and whose tentacles are very deep in the system in our country, right? I want to be very brief in making and saying two things. One, there's no way that we can really arrest the crime situation in this country, except that we bring down these people, these big people who are responsible for bringing in the guns and ammunition and the drugs in the country. I recall on the post-budget presentation that we had with the commissioner, the Minister of National Security was there along with Teixeira, when he said, and he admitted that the issue has to do with drugs and ammunition coming through both the legal and illegal means of entry in this country. And I find that to be very interesting that you can make such a statement implicating institutions like organizations like the Coast Guard, Customs, the TTPS, the Trinidad Tobago Defense Force. But yet, you sit there as the Minister of National Security, having this information, and we are seeing absolutely nothing is being put in place, to curb this, to minimize the propensity of this kind of action taking place in our country. And this is the root cause of the crime in our country. So my question to you is this. Having disclosed this information that everybody already knows, you and the position that you have and your background, should you become the Commissioner of Police again, right? What are your plans in terms of really bringing this crime situation to a halt in going after these bigwigs in this country, the so-called bigwigs, because they are more or less responsible for where we are, right? And two, what is your position on, because I've been hearing a lot about restorative justice. What is your take on restorative justice? Because really and truly, I ain't seeing much is being done in our prison system where reformation and rehabilitation is concerned.
Okay, sure. So let me just quickly, I said, I've already gone through that as Commissioner of Police. Getting back in government, there's so much more that I can do, and I promise the country I would do it. So it is not just about restructuring and transforming the police service. People had no trust in the police service. But then within 3 years, people were looking forward to the police being around. So the same way I was able to transform the police service, I assure you, I could use the same leadership skill that I have to transform every arm in the public service, to turn them to optimum level, not just other arms in the Ministry of National Security. That is what I promised by, again, and the simple principles of leadership, management, accountability, and measuring performance. I did that with the police, and I could do it with all arms. So by doing that, it is going to not just, we want to put focus tonight on national security. Yes, so it will improve the police service. It will transform the police service again to how it was when I left in 2021. But other arms, we have the Trinidad Tobago Defense Force, 5,000 odd. And we asked, I remember 150 men were coming down into Port of Spain to destroy Port of Spain. And I asked for members of the Defense Force, and they were there wanting to support. This government refused, and I had to deal with it on my own, or else Port of Spain was going to be destroyed. This was just during the COVID period. With 150 of them coming down to do similar to what was planned during the attempted coup in 1990. The Defense Force with 5,000 men, and yes, they are waiting to be part and parcel to support. And then people will say, well, they are there to kill. That is not true. I was in the United Nations mission in Haiti, and it was a peacekeeping mission. Likewise with the Customs, we speak about the concerns of Customs and the Coast Guard. The vast majority of illegal weapons that enter our country come through the legitimate ports of entry. And it shows the incompetence of this government to deal with the issue. Are they that incompetent, or is it a deliberate attempt? Because I drafted the Border Protection Unit to be able to transform our problem, to stop the problems by having representatives from the Customs, Coast Guard, Immigration, Army, Police, and all of them polygraphed to make sure one is watching the other. This situation we have now, at least 10 containers go missing annually. When I say missing, it leaves our port without anyone knowing, because there will always be somebody that may be on the wrong side. So the one night you have that rogue customs officer, that rogue stevedore, that rogue driver, that rogue watchman by the gate of the port, the container is going to go out. And the police would have seized 800 firearms for the year. 1,000 could have entered in one night. That is how important it is to secure our borders. They have done nothing. I, as the Commissioner of Police, had to acquire scanners, X-ray scanners, mobile, to be able to assist. And you know what they did after I left? They shut it down and refused to use it. You can't be that bitter. You can't be that politically naive. You can't be that incompetent. There has to be some criminal element that is so deep in the underworld that has links with persons of authority to deliberately not do what is required, which is why Kamala Prasad and myself, we are trying to show to the government, look, it's here. We are giving you an idiot's guide as what can and should be done to reduce crime. And I could bet you, I promise this country, 𝗙𝗏 is going to ignore it. He's going to sideline it. He's going to trivialize it. Because when you have an individual that can say, look, whether he has a problem with me or not, his decision when 79% of the country said they wanted me to return as Commissioner of Police, that meant the vast majority were PNM supporters. And he, as the Prime Minister, said, I don't care if he came first. I don't care what the Police Service Commission wanted. I don't care what the vast majority of the country wanted. I don't like him. It means you rather see the country burn or drown in blood because of your ego and your own personal desire, because you don't like somebody, rather than doing what the vast majority of the country wants. That is the problem. And your other question, what was the other question? Oh, about, which is why I formed, as I said, the Ministry of Justice. By the PNM dismantling that Ministry of Justice, it is going to be very difficult for us to have that type of reduction in recidivism through proper rehabilitation in the prison.
Gary, there's a question here from Kasraj. Are you a member of the opposition team to meet with the PM and his team? I know many people want you to be, but I don't know if any confirmation has been given on that.
Well, the opposition leader, she has spoken about it. But let us see if 𝗙𝗏 will be mature enough to swallow his pride, swallow his ego, or would he say, well, I don't want Gary there? That will say so much about the character of the individual. So time will tell.
Okay, I see, Trini, I know you have your hand up, so I'll give you an opportunity again to speak if you could make it a little short this time. Go ahead. Hello, Trini. All right, okay, so I guess I lost him. So Gary, going back to this point that I wanted to raise from this post that you would have done, which really struck me. You listed about 10 acts that, according to you, really was taking us to police state, and we were seeing democracy being eroded. And then the last paragraph, you said, this list of acts would show a clear pattern of abuse and steps to dictatorship, and the police state would have caused the collapse of the government and fresh elections in many other countries across the world. Yet the silence is deafening, and even worse, some continue to support this abuse. Our democracy is rapidly being eroded, and this must end. And I want to say that I share these very same concerns. I feel as a nation, we are very, very passive. And I would like to know, what can we do to change this passive nature that we have in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, sure. So for those persons who may not know what I'm speaking about, any country in the world, when a president refuses to adhere to the law, there was a law for you to submit Americans and you refuse. So a president did not adhere to the law, should have been removed in any developed country. When you have a prime minister that meets a head of an independent body in president's house as if it's a post office to have a meeting and give her a document that is from a civilian, not an official report, that Police Service Commission chairman decides to break the law by trying to take back a merit list without the approval of the Police Service Commission, a Police Service Commission then all resigning in disgust because of political interference. Then you have this situation with a prime minister hiring civilians, trying to call it an investigation, and then trying to use that to go in parliament to lie about political opponents. You then have the law enforcement agencies intercepting phones of law-abiding citizens. You have the FIU digging up and macking and spying into the accounts, the financial accounts of persons maybe politically opposed to the government. Which other country in the world all of this can be taking place and the government is still existing? And still, as much as 60,000 more people voted against them, 130,000 people still said, I don't care, I pay them till I'm dead. When you make that decision, how does that help your wife from not being raped, or your daughter from not being kidnapped, or your son from not being killed, or your assets not being lost? You blindly supporting a group of individuals who don't have your interests at heart for your most fundamental right of safety and security, whilst the man who's making decisions plays golf 4 days a week with 8 Prados and 55 special branch officers all around him as if he's a living God. How could we want that? How can we accept that? That is where it is. The only way this can be changed is if those persons realize blindly supporting a political party does not help change the country. It does not help you and your family. It does not help develop the country. You need to make decisions as to who you see fit by being the best person to assist you and drive this country forward to some type of status close to being seen as developed. Because what we are going now, we are going to a part in sooner or later, it is going to be a police state. And when that happens, every single citizen is going to pay the price.
Okay, guys, it is now 9:02. Trini, I see his hand up, your hand up is again, so I'll ask you to unmute. So maybe we could take a final few questions, comments, and wrap up pretty soon. Trini, go ahead.
I have a few things when he's finished, so just add in.
Oh, okay, Gary. Okay, so Trini
Yeah.
and then Gabri.
Yeah.
Trini? Okay, Gary, you want to go ahead?
Hello,
Oh,
good.
okay, all right.
Good night again. My question is really a follow-up from where Lyndon's question actually. Gary, I don't know if I will put you in a compromising position. You were the Minister of National Security under the PP government, and you would be privy to information of what was put in place for national security in terms of our Coast Guard and the distribution of resources like boats and so on that were there pre-2015. And as the Commissioner of Police, you would also be privy to information of what you met there when you went in as Commissioner of Police in terms of what was put in place in terms of security, in terms of numbers, specifics. Did we have 9 boats out there? Did we have 2 boats out there patrolling the coastline? Did we have the post down at Cedrus and the post down at Mayaro at 𝗙𝗲𝗄𝗏 functional with boats active and ready to patrol or doing routine patrols or specific scheduled patrols? Enlighten the population as to what were the differences in the distribution of the forces that we had, the equipment that we had for the coastline and in under the boat administrations. I don't know if
yeah, so let me so quickly I could put that. So when I became National Security Advisor, the PNM, what they were pushing was about the 3 OPVs. And that has been 13 years later, that has still been a road march. I ask everyone, if anytime you have chance, especially the PNM till I die supporters, type BAE, Bravo Alpha Echo. That is the name of the company that would have been producing the OPVs to Trinidad and Tobago. Type BAE/corruption. BAE/corruption. You will find 17 countries sued this company for paying kickback to government officials. Why do I say that? Because the great OPVs that the PNM spoke about, they was costing the taxpayers $2.4 billion. That's $800 million each. When I became National Security Advisor, I had meetings with several different countries, and Colombia, Israel, and Korea, they were giving us the exact OPVs for $400 million each, which was $1.2 billion less than what we were getting from BAE. So that is one aspect. then what it is, the OPVs, Patrick Manning was actually acquiring that to not to protect our borders, but there's a pipeline he was trying to build from Trinidad all the way up to Jamaica. He wanted to be the godfather of CARICOM, and there's nothing wrong with that. But don't give me the hogwash that the OPVs would have secured our borders. You don't use a 70-meter vessel to patrol two places of land that are just a couple meters apart. What you required were interceptors, you required medium patrol vessels, which is what I acquired as a security advisor and then the Minister of National Security. I got the diamond vessels, 6 vessels, to do the exact thing the 3 OPVs could have done, but for $1.2 billion less and for hundreds of millions per annum less in maintenance. When the government changed, in 2015, the diamond vessels, they refused to use it because of petty politics. And going back to 2010, just before 2010, they went to Australia, they acquired 6 vessels. Anyone who is in Trinidad and Tobago, you could go by Anchorage, you will see 6 vessels parked up there for the last 14 years because the vessels that they got were not the type of vessels for Trinidad and Tobago waters. And so hundreds of millions of dollars lost. Those vessels did not last 2 months in Trinidad waters because those vessels were made for leaks. That is the type of purchase you will get from this present administration. When it is that the government changed in 2015, they refused to use the diamond vessels. They then went to Australia to get 2 vessels to do the exact thing that the diamond vessels could have done. And that is when you have petty politics being involved. And unfortunately, if it is you don't have manpower, strength to equate with asset acquisition, it means that the vessels will stay parked up and they will not be able to be used because you don't have the manpower strength for rotation and so forth. That is the present situation we're in. In the proposal that the opposition will send to the government, we will show the concept of how you secure your borders, from a border protection unit, from having the proper scanners on the ports, from having a 3-tiered system, from the shoreline to 2 miles, you have interceptors, from 2 miles to 12 miles, you will have the medium-sized vessels, and then from 12 miles to 200 miles, which is known as the EEZ, your exclusive economic zone, that is where you get the larger type of vessels. That is how you secure borders, having proper scanners, having the proper radar, having cameras that can actually stay from Trinidad, and you can actually see Venezuela like it's your next door neighbor. Having drones, technology of drones that can go 3,000 feet up into the air, turn night into day, lock onto a vehicle license plate, follow them where they're transporting the drugs. We know what to do. We know how it can be done. We know how to transform Trinidad and Tobago security. It is not going to happen because of unfortunate political pettiness by the present administration.
Okay, Gary, Mr. Mahaber?
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. I want to also, thank Commissioner Gifford for really joining us and, explaining things to us. What he has done as Commissioner of Police needs to be reiterated 1,000 times more, because there is a lack of understanding to some people. The level of work that he had put on there, the resources and all these things, I've listened to some of the questions, and it's mind-boggling to see, in spite of the drastic killing that we have in the country, we are more have questions about superficial things and not concerned about the immediate things in your face, which is people are raiding and invading your homes, killing, the robbery right up in your face, in your neighborhood, in your street. And these things, we need a strategy from national security in collaboration with the TTPS to work with citizens on the ground in their community, because we need as much manpower and eyes on the ground to apply every deterrent resource possible to intercept and prevent crime. After somebody is dead, I always reiterate that justice does not resurrect the dead. Yes, we have to fix the justice system. We have to fix a lot of laws, but we need an immediate course of action and strategy from the government where we mobilize ourselves to intercept and prevent crime. And this is where we need to work very hard on. Everything else don't mean nothing. All the deliberation in Parliament, all the laws and all the gallivant is not going to prevent anybody from getting killed, robbed, raped. So we need the prevention strategy more so than anything else. And, it's very disappointing to see what was done with Commissioner Griffith from the government, and the government had other objectives. They was not interested, and up to now you see that they have no interest in protecting citizens. They have their own goal and agenda, And, Dr. Raleigh felt that he could have utilized Commissioner Griffith because of his relationship with the partnership government to conveniently go after the politicians, from the previous government. They felt they could have used you, brother. But I know I know you like I know myself. I know we're the same kind of brand of people. That they can't manipulate us. We stand for what we stand for, and I'm really proud to know that the job you did, and yes, the small interceptors, which I always recommend, are needed more so for a country our size, and the parameters that we have to patrol. The police needs it, the Coast Guard needs it. I think you got some as commissioner, right? Because I did suggest that. You got some.
I reestablished the police marine branch after about 25 years, and since then, now it's virtually dismantled since I left.
Yeah, so I mean, these are the things, because the response is quicker, and when for patrolling, when a citizens is in distress, these interceptors can reach you quicker, and then the larger boats could come along. But the interceptors is definitely needed. I mean, we see it in the New York Harbor, we see it in Miami, Texas, all over the place.
Yep.
And I don't understand. I mean, I think the actions of this government is deliberate, in what they're doing. I know, like I told you before, they would swim around you like sharks. I mean, because the corruption is so deep and wide from the justice system, within the police. I mean, you were shaking up things, so they had to find some way to stop you, because you really, mashed up things with people and their money, so that sort of things. But I am calling on the population to recognize the job you did and the resources you put in place to secure them, and think about themselves, and raise their voice. I don't think we did a good job in standing up for ourselves, in knowing what the government did to you, and this was in our best interests, to stand up, and we did. So I mean, once again, I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'm seeing 2 hands up, so maybe we can take those 2 final contributions. Lyndon, go ahead, and then Edward. And then we'll call it a night.
Yes, Commissioner Griffith, I'll continue to call you Commissioner Griffith. So Commissioner Griffith. I just want to make 2 comments quickly. One is that for a very long time now, the detection rate in our country has been at an all-time low, right? It stands below 20%, and it seems like there's not much has been done to really improve that. Now, classical reasoning will inform me as a person who would have studied certain theories that, look, if it is that I have a criminal mind and realize that I have a 80% chance of getting away, a commissioner of crime and getting away, then I will go after it, because crime is a product of opportunity, right? And I remember when you were the commissioner of police, actually, one of the things that impressed me about you is that I can't recall there was ever a time that there was a raid or anything like that that you were not present, and that was something that is very commendable of you, right? You were there leading your forces, and you even referred to as the second Randolph Burroughs, right? What I'm saying is that for us to really deal with this crime situation, first to begin, we need to put a lot of detection measures in place so that we can detection rate in our country. And I know you were doing that, and I guess that is one of the reasons why, again, you were targeted. So I just come back to say commendation for what you have been that you did to for this country as Commissioner of Police, and I'm hopeful that even when the United National Congress, the coalition gets back into power, we have to have that majority there, because a lot of the things that is required require a constitutional amendment, right? And we don't know that the People's National Movement under this leader has made it very clear when he was in opposition that he will not support anything. So how are we going forward dealing with that when you have an opposition that will not support, if we don't have the required majority to make those constitutional amendments and change the system in this country.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, I agree with you, and that is why it is so important. But this must be a repeat of 2010, where we have to get not 29 but 31, and to make those changes. It is very unfortunate. I always say that the enemy are not those who are on the other side of the parliamentary bench. They are those who try to deprive you of your rights to safety and security. And I will continue to operate in that manner. When I was Minister of National Security, at no time did I ever have any agenda or to utilize my authority to target political opponents. That I give the assurance to this country. Persons who right now in government cannot give you that assurance. And that is very dangerous. So I give the assurance that in 16 months or so, when the election has taken place, I am setting a roadmap. It's not just a manifesto, it's a roadmap towards the transformation of Trinidad and Tobago. And that roadmap is going to be systematic, it will be scientific, there will be a proper timeline, and it is not going to be putting square pegs in round holes. We have a Minister of Sport, she has admitted she never kicked a line. We have a Minister of Communication who has never made one comment of anything in the last few years. He has been minister. People don't even know who he is. We have a Minister of Finance, seems that he didn't even pass O-level accounts. He can't balance a simple budget. So we need to ensure we have the right persons, the tools, the plans, the policies, the political will, and Trinidad and Tobago would be transformed.
Lisa, I just want to add one thing in here. As Minister of National Security, Gary had, during the SOE, the temporary SOE that we had, the people of Laventille said that they slept better at night because of the level of security you had provided in those communities that that the killing was taking place. And these things has to be recognized. I mean, in all the criticism that has taken place that you have been trying to to apply, I mean, the level of assurance for citizens and the comfort that they felt in those dangerous neighborhoods, and these things has to be recognized and taken, even though it was twisted into in meaning other things, and PNM play with it, and all these different other comments, but the recognition of citizens feeling the safety and security of your strategy, this is something has to be recognized.
Well, and as Minister of National Security, when the SOE took place, I was National Security Advisor. But when I was the Minister of National Security, what was happening in Laventille, I did a major operation, and for 120 something days, it was one murder in Laventille, and that was domestic violence. It was the safest Laventille ever was, and this was outside of the SOE. I was able to utilize Soliers, have an operations center, and Laventille, it was the first time they were safe. After I left, after the government changed, everything went back to a killing spree. And that's why I could give the assurance, regardless of where you are, we would do what is required to make you safer.
Okay, final contribution from Edward.
Good night, Lisa. Good night, Mr. Griffith. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Mr. Griffith, I wanted to, it's more of a highlight of what I've experienced. I was sworn in as an SRP under your watch in 2019. And I was brought in for the purpose of serving under the coastal and air support, primarily in the marine section. And with my certifications to be able to fly planes, helicopters, and or drones, I have done my part, and there are a number of different ideas that I tried to share. I didn't get a complete audience with Mr. 𝗙𝗵𝗆, which I believe he coordinates your efforts under the NTA. I would love to share these ideas with you. There's 3 of them specifically that I believe would make a big difference to our national security. And they have never been done before. They're unique. And I think that they can make a big difference in serving our country.
Okay. Thank you very much. And if I can just add what that last caller said, it wasn't that Gary Griffith was a magician. You have to embrace and accept recommendation and views from everyone. Not everyone is a rocket scientist. Not everyone may understand national security, but sometimes just listening to the average man on the street. And I was able to pinpoint certain things, which is why I formed things such as Crossroads, getting 1,000 police officers to work with 1,000 at-risk youths, because certain people will bring ideas, bring recommendations, you do cost benefit analysis, and you get the value for it. What happens, unfortunately, politicians, they go up in that tower and they make the decisions, and then it is imposed on those persons on the street, on the ground, and they will say, well, why have we wasted such funds? Why did we do this instead? That is why I made myself so accessible. I was the only commissioner that he wanted to contact me. You call 482-GARRY at the time. That is now the same number that if you want to sign up to be a member of the NTA, you just send a text message or WhatsApp message at 482-GARRY. But that is why you need, of all things, I give the assurance when I was Commissioner of Police, Minister of National Security, and what I will become when we get into government, accessibility. I will continue to make myself accessible. So, Mr. Edward, hopefully I will see you later this week. We will try to make arrangements to meet with you. And the more people I can meet, the more I'll be able to set that proper roadmap towards the transformation of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, so thank you for that, Edward. And the time now is 9:21. Gary, I will ask you for any closing remarks.
Yeah, all I will ask the country, for citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we need to get away from the bitter politics, the anger, the hate, the venom, the animosity. That is what has divided the country. My concept of politics is just the opposite: to unite, to build, to be productive, and trying to develop Trinidad and Tobago. It is going to be difficult. Politicians, certain individuals, they go out of their way to divide and destroy, because divide and conquer is the way to win. I intend to do just the opposite. I intend to build, to unite, which is why you would have seen that alliance with us and the UNC. I intend to speak with different stakeholders, ensure that we can find that proper roadmap to have it drafted and packaged. So as soon as we hit that ground running the day after we are sworn in government, I didn't ask for a honeymoon period as a security minister nor commissioner of police. Whatever position I would be in government, and I will ask all members of the next government, there's no time for honeymoon time, because what this country is seeing, we are rapidly going down. It's a precipice. The quicksand has to end. And I ask all the country for us to circle the wagons, work together, and try to build and transform Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you so much, Captain Gary Griffith. Gary, I want to thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart, and everybody who is here, for making yourself so accessible to us and taking the time away from your busy schedule to join us here this evening. Right, we learned a lot. I certainly learned a lot about different crime fighting strategies, how national security can be transformed, NTA's contribution to the political landscape. And I think there was a lot of discussion here tonight about what we want to see happen in this country moving forward, not just in terms of national security, but holistically. So I hope you will come back again. We had a very large audience tonight. I want to thank everybody for their participation. There were quite a few questions and comments. The chats were busy. So guys, thank you all so much. I enjoyed this program tremendously, and I am hoping that more people from the NTA will join us. Gary will join us again. Certainly national security is a conversation that we need to keep ongoing, because we all know what the situation is with the crime. So thank you, good night, and join us again next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. for another episode of One on One. Thanks, guys.